So we are starting a brand new sermon series today. It was going to be a three-part sermon series on this love book, a love letter, intentionality of why we've been singing about love, on this Old Testament book, the Song of Songs. But understanding that it's supposed to be a three-part sermon series. And I plan my preaching calendar 6 months in advance. So I had no idea that Scott McIntyre was planning on coming or could join us on Father's Day. So we had to kind of move things around and make this three-part sermon series only a two-part sermon series. So we're going to look at part one today, but understand it's a quicker look at this love letter or Song of Songs book. So it's going to take some time to get through it, but we're going to shave it down to only 2 weeks. But understand the purpose then of looking at this Old Testament book. It's love poetry, if you didn't know, and it's contained within this Old Testament book, the Song of Songs. And we're looking at it today from an applicability of how we as a church can be used or be understood for today. And understand the importance of this. Then too, in part one of it is, in fact, the love of poetry. How many people love poetry? There's some people who are raising it. I'm not so much. I'm not a real big poet. Just to be honest, nothing wrong with it. People that do love it, that's great. I was never good at writing it. And in fact, and to ask this question too, what do you think of when you think of poetry? The first thing that came to my mind, just to let you understand the depth of how much I love poetry, was this one: roses are red, violets are blue. That's kind of what I thought. That's kind of my level or extent of understanding or even getting poetry. But there is a lot of beauty in it, and there's a message that's contained with it, especially a love poem as well. So to think about that concept is an important part when we look at this particular book. Now we're going to look at, before we look at the scriptures today, the popularity of poetry in the ancient Near Eastern world. Why it was so much more popular. Today we spend a lot of our times on our smartphones looking at dogs wrestling and doing all these fun things or different videos that really make no sense. But as far as, and maybe use that as our entertainment or watch TVs or movies, but really back then the popularity of poetry was kind of that form of entertainment almost. But yet, within poetry, there's a great level of importance for it. And one of those things being, it's a popular way to preserve, transmitting an understanding of culture or history and even a religion when writing in poetry. And even understanding that to oral storytelling for passing and remembering. Now, all of you, when you think about that, roses are red, violets are blue, how many people already knew that? Yeah, most people have heard that before. Kind of sticks with you. So understand, even as simple as that is, poetry has that way of helping us to remember, like telling a story. So it helps them to pass on to future generations. And not surprising, in the wisdom literature, a lot of it written in poetry, the book of Psalms, also Proverbs, which many people use for wisdom then as well, is written in that poetic form to kind of help us remember and to pass along those things that are important within the story of that poetry. And also it's expression of a wide range of our human experience and also emotion with it then too. So that's why in the Old Testament you get some of those books. Like we just mentioned, Proverbs with its wisdom. If we're saying the Song of Songs is one of the love books, along with many of the love psalms that are in the book of Psalms, but also joy. But then when you think of the book of the Bible right before the Song of Songs, which is the book of Ecclesiastes, if you've never read that Old Testament book by Solomon, let me start it off with you. See what you think of this one. Meaningless, and there's exclamation points, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Would you say that's a love or joy poem, or what would you put in that one? Kind of like some sadness or deepness and understanding in a book of Proverbs or Ecclesiastes written near the end of the life of the teacher. Kolahith is the Hebrew word for it, many believing it's Solomon, and has that deepness or a sadness or understanding. Yet, things like that line are very popular to remember in it. And the popularity of the poetry in the ancient Near Eastern world. And the Song of Songs, the book we're looking at this week and then 2 weeks from now, is a love poetry. It's written to show that love is the context of it, written between these characters of a he and a she, and there's even friends involved, but there's this love poem, these desires that are expressed through it. And if you're just thinking it's just for that time period and not today, do you have to consider that that if you've ever watched a movie of this, I Heard the Bells. It's a movie that was pretty recent that tells the story of the famous American poet, 19th century. So we're moving a lot further into history, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And if you've ever, it's a Civil War type time period. And if you listen or watch the movie, you'll see all these soldiers sitting around the campfire getting enamored by poetry. And you just wouldn't think that. You think of like war movies today, men sitting around a campfire, or even like in Men's Alliance. You don't think of poetry, love poetry, being the topic or the big captured thing. But yet, it very was popular, and Longfellow was actually very popular. Well, he wrote the world famous poem, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. Their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And even to this day, Mercy Me took that poem and has used it in a praise song that has been sung in churches at Christmas time. So even the poetry that's been passed is still being used in different ways even today. So it's not just a biblical concept, but one that has been used through the ages in our culture and continue to be used even today. Now look, since I said already we have skimmed off, one of the weeks, we are going to take this picture up here and quickly go through this whole story that's up there you see before you. You think that's a possibility? Describing everything that you see here. We're going to watch a video. Because after doing all my reading and study on this and trying to shave this down from 3 weeks to 2, I came across this video that you see of this drawing. And it takes 7 minutes to go through this story of the Song of Songs. But can I just give you, if you didn't know, this sermon series is also entitled PG-13. Why? Because the poetry itself is a little steamy with some of the things you're going to hear in the poem, but also for pastoral guidance for this video we're about to work. The Bible Project, if you did not know, it's a video series that they do of many books of the Bible, many stories within it, and are pretty well done. But can I give you a warning? Because, just before you watch any movie, do you not get like a PG, rated R, whatever, NC-17? Well, this is a PG-13 understanding of the video we're about to watch. Why? Because the Bible Project, even though they do a great job with a number of videos, they are sometimes concerned with the theory of atonement, meaning they downplay the penal substitutionary atonement. What does that mean? That simply means that Jesus died or satisfied God's wrath by dying on the cross, what we just sang about. They have a tendency in their videos to bring that down a little. Their concept of hell is not eternal in some of their videos, and also their interpretive methods. So, with pastoral guidance, I have given you some of the warnings associated with looking at all these videos. However, the video we're going to watch doesn't have any of those warnings. You have nothing to be about. I think it's actually very well done. So instead of staying here for an additional half an hour so Pastor Mark can get all 3 parts into one, how about we just watch a 7-minute video? Are you guys okay with that? Let's watch this 7-minute video explaining. And Ronnie, could we have the sound up a little bit so they can hear this? Probably like around -20, so it's pretty loud for them, all right? Let's watch this video.
The Song of Songs. It's a well-known but not so well understood book of the Bible. It's 8 chapters of love poetry. And while there is an introduction and a conclusion, the book doesn't have any kind of rigid literary design, and that's because it's a collection of poems. They're not meant to be dissected or taken apart. They're meant to be read as a flowing whole and simply enjoyed. The first line of the book tells us that it's the Song of Songs, which is a Hebrew idiom like the Holy of Holies or the King of Kings. It's a Hebrew way of saying the greatest thing. So this is the greatest song of all songs. Then we're told in the first line that this Song of Songs is of Solomon, which could mean that he's the author. His name does begin the book, after all. But as you read the poems, you discover that the main voice is that of a woman called the Beloved. And while there is also a male voice, it does not seem to be Solomon's. Solomon is mentioned a couple times in the poems, but he's never a speaker. And you do have to admit, Solomon is a very odd candidate as the author of this book, given the fact that he had 700 wives. For the lovers in the Song of Songs, they are the only ones in the world for each other. So the of Solomon likely means in the wisdom tradition of Solomon. He was known for his wisdom, his poetry, his love of learning about every part of life. And Solomon became the father of wisdom literature in Israel. And so his legacy is here carried on through a collection of love poems that explores the human experience of love and sexual desire. The opening poem introduces us to the basic theme of this book. We hear the voice of the young woman who delights in her man, a shepherd. Now, she's not married to him yet, but it becomes clear that they're engaged and they cannot wait to be together. From the introduction, the poems flow back and forth from the woman's voice to the man's, shifting from scene to scene without any kind of clear linear sequence or storyline. The poems move in these symphonic cycles, and key images and ideas get repeated and developed. So, one of the basic themes uniting the poems is the intense desire that this couple has for each other, expressed through their constant seeking and finding. So after the opening poem, they're separated but on the hunt for one another. So the woman calls out, or she'll wake up from a dream or go looking for her lover, and more than once they'll find each other, they'll embrace, and then right when things start to get a bit racy, the scene will suddenly end and a new one will start. They're separated, looking for each other, and on it goes. Another repeated theme is the joy of the couple's physical attraction for one another. So multiple times they'll pause and describe each other with these elaborate metaphors. And here it's very helpful to know that these images and metaphors in Hebrew poetry are not primarily visual. If you try and paint a picture of these people based on the metaphors, you will end up with something that looks very, very strange. What you're supposed to do is reflect on the meaning of these images as they relate to the man and the woman. So you'll read through the poetic cycles, and the tension will keep building in their desire and joy and attraction. And this spiraling repetition is a poetic way of heightening and focusing on the mystery and power of sexual love. It all comes together in the conclusion, which pauses to summarize what these poems are all about. Love is as strong as death. Its passions are as severe as the grave. Its flashes are of fire, a divine flame. Many waters cannot extinguish love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. If one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, he would be utterly scorned. The poem highlights the power and the intensity of love, how it's both beautiful but also dangerous. Like fire, love can destroy people if it's abused, or be life-giving if it's protected. Ultimately, love expresses the insatiable human longing to know and be fully known and desired by another. Love is one of the most transcendent and mysterious experiences in human life, and as a part of the Bible's wisdom tradition, this book says it's a gift from God. After this, there's an odd poem about Solomon trying to do what the previous poem just said was impossible, to buy love. The woman rejects Solomon's offer, and then the book concludes with the man and the woman. They're separate once more on the hunt for each other. He calls to hear her voice. She begs him to run away with her, and that's how the book ends. Just totally open-ended. But that's a lot like love, which never truly concludes, because there's always more to discover and pursue in your beloved. And so true love has no end, and neither does this book. Now, through history, the big question raised by the Song of Songs is, what on earth is love poetry doing in the Bible? There have been three main interpretations of this book throughout history. In Jewish tradition, it's been read as an allegory, each character a symbol. So the woman is Israel, the man is God, and their love is a symbol of the covenant between God and Israel made at Mount Sinai and the giving of the Torah. This view flowed into the Christian tradition, but the characters were swapped. So it's about Christ's love for his people, the church. And this interpretation was inspired by Paul's words in Ephesians 5, that a Christian husband's love for his wife is a symbol of Christ's love for the church. What's interesting is that in the last 100 years, archaeological discoveries among Israel's ancient neighbors in Egypt and Babylon has turned up all kinds of ancient love poetry that's very similar in language and imagery to the Song of Songs. We see that love poetry was a meaningful part of Israel's cultural environment, which has led most scholars today to view the Song of Songs as what it presents itself to be, an arrangement of Israelite love poetry reflecting on the divine gift of love. But that doesn't mean that it's only ancient love poetry. There's a key feature of these poems that sticks out when you read them as a part of the Old Testament, and that's the overwhelming use of garden imagery. There are powerful echoes of the Garden of Eden and the idyllic scene between the married couple in the early chapters of Genesis. So the image of the man and the woman naked and vulnerable, but completely unified and safe with one another. This resonates in the background of the Song of Songs. It's as if in these poems we are witnessing the love of a couple whose relationship is untainted by selfishness and sin. And so ultimately the song holds out hope that even though our own relationships are so often distorted by selfishness, love is a transcendent gift, and it's meant to point us to something greater, to the gift of God's love that will one day permeate and transform his beloved world. And that's what the Song of Songs is all about.
What'd you think of that video? Pretty good, wasn't it? Went through that whole picture in about 7 minutes. That would have been about a 30-minute sermon if I tried to talk through it. But I love the way it kind of drew everything forward. So here's the thing. If you'd like to take a look at that in a little bit of greater detail, because I invite all of you over the next couple of weeks, so again, we're only doing this in this week and then 2 weeks from now after Scott, to look at all the chapters of this book, to go ahead and read it for yourself. Yes, how about that? Actually getting in the Word of God for yourself and these 8 chapters that are presented. And you might want to take a look at that video before you watch it again. It's a free resource at BibleProject.com and under their video section. But you also got the PG-13 warning that there are some things in there that can be a little bit questionable in some of their other videos. So use caution associated with all that. But I kind of like the way that summarized things. So let's now then get into, as we look at the first chapter of this book, the Song of Songs. And that's also why you may have a Bible that says Song of Solomon, because the authorship of some of the older versions would attribute it to Solomon. So we're looking at Song of Songs verses 1 through 17, which is that first chapter. If you like to follow along, and the Pew Bible is right in front of you. It's page number 668. And again, the version of that Bible, though, is 1984, slightly different that you may see on the screen. So let's read this chapter. Solomon's Song of Songs, and that's why it just says, well, that's probably who wrote the book, yet we should say the translation could be written in the wisdom of Solomon, the Song of Songs. And first we get the voice of the female, the she, again, why some would dispute to say, well, this wasn't written by Solomon from a female's perspective. But we hear the she first, and it says this: "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine." And you get a little, that's passionate already, or some of the words being shared. "Pleasing in the fragrance of your perfumes, your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry." Now the passion is increasing. "Let the king bring me into his chambers." Then it goes with the voice of the friends now. Kind of, I don't know if this is like a chorus or friends are just listening, but they say, "We rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine." Now back to the female's voice again. "How right they are to adore you. Dark am I, yet lovely daughters of Jerusalem. Dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect." And then he goes on to say, "Tell me, you whom I love, where you graze your flock." And that goes back to this introduction of being a shepherd, trying to find out where he is, "and where you rest your sheep at midday. Why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends?" Now we hear the friends again. "If you do not know, most beautiful of women, follow the tracks of the sheep," that's how you get to the shepherd, "and graze your gun goats by the tents of the shepherds." And now we hear the voice of the man coming in here. "I liken you, my darling, to a mare." Men, do not listen to that part of the poem. If you try to write that in one of your love cards to the people you love, calling your wife or someone you love a mare may not score you any points. But just like they said about the visualization of the metaphors that they're using here, he says, "I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses," meaning very well respected and used. "Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings. Your neck with strings of jewels. Will make you earrings of gold studded with silver." Back to the female voice now. "While the king was at his table My perfume spread its fragrance. My beloved is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. Now we're getting a little steamy in here. If you agree. PG-13. My beloved is to me a cluster of henna blossoms for the vineyards of En-Gedi. Now back to his voice. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful. Your eyes are doves. She then responds, how handsome you are, my beloved. Oh, how charming. Our bed is verdant. By the way, that word actually means like all the images that you saw of all the green and lush growing. That's why I purposely picked something that was all green and lush, because saying our bed is verdant, it's all lush and charming. And then he responds, this ends our chapter. The beams of our house are cedars, our rafters are firs. And that's how chapter 1 ends. And you can see there's this PG-13 sense of the passion in this poetry. Could you take away some of the passion that existed in this couple as they kind of loved on each other? Have you ever been around anyone and their passionate desires for one another? My wife, and you saw we were up here kind of praying together, many years ago when we first started dating, we were into each other. You ever get that sense, or you just kind of look at each other and you're all lovey-dovey, and you know it, don't you? When you're out of that phase and you're around someone who is, it's like. And I remember we went on like a field trip with her family, like down in D.C. It was like to see one of our nieces sing, and we're all into each other, just staring at each other, loving. And like my brother-in-law and sister are all like, like, come on, stop it, But you know what I'm talking. Have you ever seen a couple like that? Have you ever been like that? When you just love someone and it's just kind of flowing out. This is the kind of passion and poetry we're looking at here. Some passion behind it. I'm not talking X-rated, but like the sense of this love and enamored sense with one another. And to be in that is a beautiful thing. It's not a bad thing. So has your life ever been impacted by the power of love? Hopefully at some point in your life, you've experienced something like that or been in some sort of romantic relationship to understand sometimes the passion that God has even created into his creation. And to also think about, now let's bring it up to some poetry of our time. Who knows Huey Lewis and the News? And his song that he wrote, The Power of Love. Exactly, right. It's the power of love. Oh my goodness, that's what that. Love. That's really bad. It's the power of love. And he says in his song or his poem that he writes and puts to music, it's strong, right? And love can be sudden, but yet also, let's be honest, it can be what? Cruel sometimes. And then him not even knowing this, but even the biblical sense of it, but it might just save your life. When you think about the allegory that they were referring to in this story, who saved our life? When we sang about at the cross of Christ, where his blood poured out for us, and it saves our life. That's the kind of love. Huey Lewis and the News, even singing that in the 80s about the power of, oh my goodness. You guys aren't in love anymore. It's the power of, that's a little better. Thank you for waking up a little bit. But there is some power in that sense. It's strong and sudden. It can be cruel, but it might just save your life as well. Let's talk about this, exploring this in the loving poetry. As he kind of talked about the concept and 3 things I do want to bring up. The Old Testament, this love of God and Israel. This powerful example and of how God goes and rescues his people in the bondage of slavery to Egypt. And he brings them out, and he spends all this time in love with them. Cloud by day and fire at night. Even, think about this love. The creator of all the universe. Do you know about the tent tabernacle? It's a little tent. And God goes tent camping with his people. Some people hate tent camping. I ain't sleeping, there's no running. God confines himself to a tent to be with his people. That's the power of his love, because he wants to be among the presence of his people. And I know my Old Testament professor used to often say, it's almost God gets so desperate. Have you ever seen people do desperate things when they're in love? I know when my wife and I first got together, she lived down in Baltimore and I worked up in Harrisburg, and every day I would drive from Harrisburg down to Baltimore. I would never do something like that today. That's a lot of driving. I'd have to stop for the bathroom a couple times down through there. But think about that. That's the power of love when we do crazy things like that. God had this crazy love for humanity that he would contain himself in a tent. I get that. When I look at the passion and desire that exists and tie that allegory, like he was saying in the story, of God to his people, this is a God who really loved his people and did what he could to protect them, confined himself, the creator of all the universe, confines himself to be with his people where? In a tent. That's love. That's the power of love. And did a lot throughout this time to get them to form that covenantal love with him. But then also in the New Testament, as he said to about Paul in the book of Ephesians, about the love of Christ and the church. When you think about, the New Testament and even the love chapter that we talked about today, 1 Corinthians 13. How many people have been to a wedding and heard that read? Show of hands. Why? Because it's the love chapter, right? And it starts talking about all these very things about, and when people take that concept, and if you didn't know, in my premarital counseling classes with couples, and I'm doing a wedding here in July too, I love doing this. I assign them 1 Corinthians 13, and I get them to read the chapter first. Then the second thing I have them do is replace the word love with their name. And I would say, like, love, Mark is patient, Mark is kind, Mark does not envy, does not boast. And then you start reading that and realize, gosh, I'm not very good at those things. I'm really not always that patient. I'm always not that kind. And you start to realize, and I have the couple do this, and they realize they can't do it. And then I say, look, and I have them read a verse in 1 John where it says, God is love. And then I said, put in there God in those verses, and you'll get a much greater sense of what this is. That God is patient, God is kind, and especially when you get to that whole section where it talks about always. I tell couples when I counsel them, I say in your marriage, throw out the words always and never. You always leave the seat up to the commode. You never tell me you love me. And we use these always and nevers to one another. It's very demonic-like in a spiritual sense, but it's God who always loves. It's God alone who can always be perfect in the sense of that. And I say, if you as a couple try to add God to your marriage, and think about that. What does it always say? And this is if you didn't get this, where it talks about that perfect reflection. I tell couples, you want a great reflection of a Christian life? Love each other the way Christ has loved. And the perfect relation between God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The more as a couple you attach to the perfect, the better reflection you will be to people around you. When they look at your marriage like, that's a couple who loves one another. Or even just like yesterday, when we think about being out in that parking lot. Hopefully you acted in a way that people would look at you and say, I don't know what they have, but they have a love I do not have. And it's like that sense of desire growing in people, the love that we share with Christ and the church. Provided in numerous examples in the New Testament. Paul is that one in Corinthians that we read from today, Ephesians that we referred to, and many other places. Loves Christ for the church. And then the simple poetry then too, reflecting on the divine gift of love. What a true gift it is, the passion and desire that it is. So let's bring this to this with David Guzik when he talks a little bit more about this. He says, look, because God deliberately uses the marriage relationship, that's what time we took about this, as an illustration of the relationship that he has with who? His people, Old Testament, New Testament. We find that this great Song of Songs illustrates the love, the intensity, and the beauty of relationship. Look at this, and I emphasize it, I highlighted this and underlined it, that should exist between God and the believer. What's your love story stand like with God today? This is clearly a secondary meaning, right? But it's something we're looking for applicability for our lives. It's eliminated to the plain literal meaning, yet nevertheless valid and important. What's your relationship and love to God look like? Let's do it this way. If we say, we've already mentioned that we say God is love, and his love for you is forever, what word would you use to describe your love of God? What's your word? You can write that down or remember it. How do you describe your love of God? Doesn't exist? And there could be someone here today or joining us online that does not know or love God in any way. Do you want a relationship that's possible to be in a perfect love, the author of love, the champion of love, and that it's God who can bring that to our lives? Or maybe for your understanding is that love has kind of grown cold too. Have you, or maybe if you've been around a couple that's been married for like 30, 40 years or longer, and they sit at dinner and they don't even say a single word to each other anymore? They don't talk because they know all their stories, they would say, but they don't communicate, and the love grows distant or cold. And maybe in your walk with God in your life, you've been with God for so long, you can honestly say, I don't have passion in my relationship with God. I don't have passion or desire to serve God. You may just want to ask yourself, why? Did your love grow cold with the Lord? Have you lost the desire to serve him? Have you lost the desire to be in that relationship, to look into God's eyes and to be in his presence and to be with him? It's that other people look at you and go, that's gross. He loves God so much. I'll take that. If anyone says that of me, oh, that guy loves God so much. Yes, I do. What about you? What is your relationship like God with? Is it chilled out, gone cold? Have you never had it? Or is it hot? Do you just desire? When you read this love chapter of this book, can people look at you and God? If this is a conversation not between a man and a woman, but you and God, could there tell there is any love at all? I pray today that you have a great love relationship with our Lord. Let's close with this story today, shall we? We're talking about, and then we've been saying the layout, the he and the she and the friends. So let's just say it was a story about a man and a woman, a he and the she. And we're going to hear a story of Jacob Brodsky. Anybody ever hear of that? The tale of Jacob Brodsky. And we're going to be the friends who get to listen to the story today, just like the layout in the Song of Songs. The story of Jacob Brodsky. He was a shy Russian whose father owned a bookstore. The older Brodsky wanted his son to go to college. We just celebrated graduation Sunday, and a lot of parents want their kids to go to school. But the boy, on the other hand, did not desire college. He desired nothing but to marry Lila, his childhood sweetheart. See? There's that love and desire. He wanted nothing else but to be married. Well, she was a French girl, as effusive and vital and ambitious as he was contemplative and retiring. Two different personalities, but still greatly in love and great desire. Well, a couple of months after young Brodsky went to college, obeying his father fell ill and he died. Because the desire never went away, the son returned home, buried his father, but then married his love. Then the couple moved into the apartment above the bookstore, and Brodsky took over its management. The life of books that fit him perfectly. But it cramped her. She wanted more adventure, and she found it. She thought when she met an agent who praised her beautiful singing voices and enticed her to tour Europe with a vaudeville company. Her husband, Brodsky, was devastated. And as she was preparing to leave him, and at their parting, he reached into his pocket and handed her the key to the front door of the bookstore. Oh, this is so romantic, you might be saying, right? He hands her the key to the front door of the bookstore, and he says this, you had better keep this, because you will want it someday. Your love is not so much less than mine that you can get away from it. You will come back someday, and I will be waiting. Oh, how romantic. Sorry, I can't help to say this, though. She kissed him, and she left. To escape the pain he felt, Brodsky withdrew deep into his bookstore and took to reading, as someone else might have taken to drinking. He spoke little, did little, and could most times be found at the large desk near the rear of the shop, immersed in his books, while he waited for his love to return. Nearly 15 years after they parted at Christmas time, she came back. She returned. But when Brodsky rose from the reading desk after seeing her, that had been his place of escape for all that time, he did not take the love of his life for more than an ordinary customer. You know what he said to her when he saw her for the first time in 15 years? He said, do you want a book? That's all he asked. He didn't recognize her, and that startled her. But she gained possession of herself and replied, "I want a book, but I've forgotten the name of it," she said. Then she told him a story of childhood sweethearts. A story of a newly married couple who lived in an apartment above a bookstore. That sounds familiar. A story of a young, ambitious wife who left to seek a career, who enjoyed great success, but could never relinquish the key her husband gave her when they parted. She told him the story. She thought that would bring him to himself. But he just kind of looked off, and his face showed no recognition of her. Gradually, she realized that she had lost touch with her heart's desire, that he no longer knew the purpose of his waiting and grieving, that now all he remembered was the waiting and the grieving itself. You remember it. You must remember it. The story of Lila and Jacob. After a long, bewildered pause, he said, "There's something familiar about the story. I think maybe I've read it somewhere. Maybe it was something by Tolstoy," he says. She ends up taking the key, dropping it, and she fled the shop. And Brodsky returned to his desk, to his reading, unaware that the love he waited for had come and had gone. This story that you just heard was told by Tennessee Williams back in 1931. It's an older one. And he said, as a reminder to each people, how easy it is to miss love when it comes. How easy we can miss it. Either something so distracts us, or we have so completely lost who we are and what we care about that we cannot recognize, look at this, our heart's desire. What is your heart's desire, people of God? Now let's tie this with the Lord. So many people with God are like the he and the she that we saw from our poem today. Let's first look at the she, because that's what started the poetry. Like, some people will run away from God looking for some better love or greater desire, but eventually they return, because who holds the key to our hearts? It's God. And I caution anyone here, imagine if in the story of Brodsky today, if we came back to our God after running around and doing all kinds of crazy things, and he didn't remember us. But God always takes us back. It's desperate love. What desire is that the Lord would still love you after you run away from him? But he knows he holds the key to everyone's heart. And maybe you've been away for a while, and it's time to return your key to God. But look at this. He still knows you. He still knows you. His heart desires for you to come home and be with him. Then there's the he in the story. This may be the person who never leaves God. But understand this. Over years, they lose their love of God. You've been in church all your life, 30 plus years, 40. You lose all desire. Church is just, it's like the old couple that sits at dinner and never shares anything. You don't talk to God anymore. It doesn't seem like there's any desire or passion. Your love has grown cold. No desire, no passion with the Lord. Can I just invite you today to fall in love again? To increase your desire, that people look at you and say, man, he loves somebody. You can just see it in his face. You can see it in his heart. Are you the he or the she? Friends, that's us. Don't lose your love, desire, or longing or passion for God. Especially the work of our son Jesus. It may just save your life. That's the power of love. That is the power of love. Would you pray with me, please? Father, we thank you for getting into this love poetry today. We don't know exactly who may have written. Maybe it was Solomon, maybe it was somebody else. But one thing is sure when you read it, there is passion and desire and love between this couple. Or maybe it's an allegory for us, but it's truly a story for each believer here today. Do we have desire for you? Do we have love for you? Do we have passion for you to be about what you're about, God? To be in love with those things that you love. Lord, increase the desire and passion in every person's heart here today. And maybe there's a person here today who's been away for a while, who's lost their love and thinks that they couldn't possibly bring back the key. But know this person. Lord, you have seen every moment away. You know the heart of that person. And you lovingly take the key and you turn it. And so, Lord, I'm praying right now that you would turn your heart's key in someone's life, that they would know that they are loved today, that maybe they've been rejected by the world's definition of love. But in your love, there's perfection, there's beauty, there's healing, there's restoration, being made new from death to life. Your love, oh God, will save our lives. And we are truly thankful for it. And we ask all this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.